Chris. Ready or not? I'll leave these people to sit down and. Okay, it's 7 o'clock, July 24th. I'll call this meeting to order with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome all of our guests this evening. Is there anyone here that needs Spanish translation? We have one? Okay. Okay, good. Good. Okay. Moving on to A4, approval of the agenda. If the directors have had a chance to review the agenda, I'll accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
A motion by Director Mike Garza to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Second by Director Hilmes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Waiting for the vote thing to. I guess it'll pop up in a second. So we'll move on to item B1, citizens' request to speak. Dr. Hurst, do we have any? No? Okay. No request to speak. Item B2, excited to recognize some student athletes this evening. Do we have a mic? Let me go grab that mic, and if the board would come up. Okay, the first group we have to recognize tonight is the 2017 state champion unified players and the 2017 golf state champions. We like to take the opportunity to honor them and their families for the great achievements that they have given to the school and the community. We also want to ask the coaches to step forward if they would like and say a few words about this season. So we'll start with Patrick Azevedo. He's here. I don't think he's here. I think he's in Portugal. Yeah, I saw a picture today. Hugo Arvizo. He's not here. Okay. Dusty Carlson, working. It's good. Micah Giles. He's gone. Emily Jensen. Josh Lemke. Hey, Josh is here. Way to go, Josh. Congratulations. And Jesse Wilson. Congratulations, Jesse. Victor Maria. Nick McDonald. I thought maybe since you were here. Jennifer Medina. And Colton Schmidt. Congratulations. Then Kevin, do you want to come say a few words? Then if you boys would stay up here, we'll get a group picture when after Kevin's done.
Well, I want to first thank the school district for allowing me to coach such a awesome program. So used to competitive soccer. This was a fun change. You know, you just get to have fun every day. You know, that's something that I've been only coaching 20 plus years. I've been waiting to do, and now I have the opportunity to do it. We're the first East Side team to win state, so that's a great great recognition for these guys to achieve that. With that, I'm not sure if everybody knows, because these guys achieved that goal, they've been invited to the 2018 USA Special Olympic Games. Come on up, Hugo. So next year, not only do we plan on repeating winning state for Othello High School, that's our goal anyway, but the majority of the program gets to represent Othello and Washington State against the whole nation next summer, July 1st through the 6th in Seattle. So we're really excited about that. I'm going to mention Natasha and Vincent. They were part of our program. They didn't get to play in the state finals. I expect them to be in the state finals next year when we're there. You know, my daughter signed up to do this, and then circumstances happened, and they talked me into doing this, and she's been a great help. I'm grooming her for your guys' future coach. She's got a little one coming, and so she's going to be here for a long time to do this. So I'm passing the torch. So, again, I appreciate Othello School District allowing us to do this. It's just been such a great thing in my life to be able to be a part of such a great program. Thank you.
And we'll make sure to get those that weren't able to come tonight their certificates as well. Thank you all for coming. That'd be great if you could. Okay, moving on to item C1, consent agenda. If you've had a chance to review the consent agenda, I'll accept a motion to approve.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion by Director Simmons to approve the tonight's consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Director Mike Garza. Is any discussion?
Just a comment I'd like to make. You know, I know that there's a lot of hires and we often have resignations, but I just want to say thank you for all the hard work that Gina has put into the district over the years, and it's going to be just a big loss, I think, to see a lot of the things that she's done for us, and I wish you luck in everything you're doing after this.
Any other discussion?
Just to repeat what Rob said, is good luck to you in your future endeavor, and it's been, you've put a lot of years of service in there at the school district, and we appreciate it.
And I'm very confident in agreeing with your comment where you like to leave a place better than when it was here, and I think you've accomplished that, so best of luck in your future endeavors.
Absolutely. The only other item, I guess a question, is when we had approved the, I know we're approving the contract for the, for Chevronel for the tennis courts. The initial motion had a caveat in it that the board would see what it would cost to take out some of those, or maybe move those facilities. I didn't see that in this contract, but because it's a change order, I assume it's still going to come. So, Chris or
Yes,
Gina?
that's true. So I've seen the initial document change order request that's gone out from Architects West to Chevronel. I've not seen the full circle come around with what those costs are. So as soon as those are in, I would anticipate those would easily be in before the 14th board meeting, so we'll include those.
Okay, great. Okay, if there's no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item C2, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Hurst.
I'd say good evening. We have 4 items for the superintendent report: budget development updates, revised budget meeting dates, update on the portable movement, and also an update on the facility communication plan and survey, which are attached. I'm going to ask if Gina could just give us a summary on each of those, please.
Okay, so on the budget update,
We just lost you. Let me get the other one.
So on the budget update, the original thinking was that we'd have an actual budget presentation this evening, but with the legislative session ending as late as it was, the original communication to the board was we would create a budget based on known revenues, known expenditures, and then recalibrate things in August or September when we had a chance to really unpack what the state legislative session really means to districts. So in light of the decision that I made on leaving the district, we've rallied to really get the budget to where it needs to be in August, so we won't need to do a revision in September, but to push it for August 24th, or July 24th, really wouldn't have given us opportunity to finalize. So as of last Friday, the budget goes to the ESD before I bring it to the board. That's internally we have 2 or 3 layers of review and double checking, and then the ESD is our external review before it goes to OSPI. So I just received our budget review back from the ESD this afternoon. So we're easily in line for the August 14th board budget presentation, and then the board hearing on the 28th, which meets the requirements in the RCW to have our board or our budget approved by the 31st. There are still several things that OSPI does not have guidelines on. For example, we got quite a bit of additional LAP money, and the recent email I got was guidelines are forthcoming. So when I bring the budget to the board, any of those revenue dollars that we do not have specified guidelines yet, the revenue will be in, and then also the expenditure dollars, and I'll just highlight those. So throughout the year, once that information is available to the school district, whoever's in my spot would be able to communicate what those fundings would be used for. So I can say that we're in a very good position. There was increased funding in several programs, but they all have strings attached to them too. So, but we're in a positive. Right now the budget's about $200,000 revenue over expenditures. So that's a good thing.
So will that be a workshop on the 14th and then the board meeting? Or is it
We
the
can
plan
set
to
it
do
up that way, whatever the board would like. I can do it in the, do a workshop and then a presentation in the board meeting, or that's your guys'
What would the
discussion.
board prefer? Be the 14th.
How long do you think that would take, Gina? A workshop, for you to explain it to us? and
Maybe
go
a half an hour. And so the board packet that will come out on the, whatever that Thursday is before, the 10th,
Mhm.
we'll have quite a few graphs and tables that the board hasn't necessarily seen before. I'm working with a company called Forecast 5 Analytics, and they have quite a few high-level reports that are specifically for board presentation. So you'll have it a good 4 days before actually I present it, so half hour at the most.
I like the idea of having the public have an opportunity to come to a workshop, and then if they do have public comment to make at the beginning of the board meeting, I like that option for them, personally.
So you're thinking if it, like 6:15?
I think that would be
And
plenty.
then that would give us plenty of time, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So if that's the consensus of the board, we'll plan on that, 6:15 for a board budget workshop. Do you know, Gina, I know there's some change with the, I'm not sure I understand it, but I know there's somehow as part of this budget, the state pulled out how the health insurance is with employees, and they're moving it into the state fund, but I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work, or,
I'll double check to address that specifically, but I believe that's not until either 18, 19, or even 19, 20. So it does not impact 17,
yeah.
18.
so it's a, I know, I read that it was in there, but I'm not sure the
Yeah, it's a
dynamics
it's
of
a
it and all
future
that.
year. So
Okay. And then also, when we come to the workshop, I'd just like to know, when we get to that point, what your perspective on, with the state taking more control. I know monetarily it's probably good for our district, but I'd be curious, the questions I'll ask is more along the lines of what strings are going to be attached from your view, and what local control is going to be taken away and in different funding. Do you know what I'm saying? 'Cause
Yes.
of the way I've read about it in other districts, but I don't want to trust with what other districts are saying. I'd like to hear our perspective on it.
I will certainly do my best based on what is communicated and what I can find out between now and then. Yes.
Okay.
So the next item has to do with the budget dates, the budget meeting dates, which I think we just talked about. The 14th would be a workshop and a regular board meeting, and then the board hearing on August 28th.
So that one, we have to have a hearing before the board meeting then as well? or
No,
just the
they
board
call
meeting?
it the public hearing. That's when you actually would approve the budget with a resolution.
Okay, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a separate meeting?
No, we just call that particular meeting our budget hearing.
Okay. That'll be a busy day, first day of school, too.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the next item is portable movement. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to look at the shared document, board items. It says revised 7/13/17, but I had included all the information that Orland received on the different vendors that he contacted for moving.
Yeah, we just need to,
Okay.
I don't know that any of the boards saw that. If it doesn't go out inside the agenda, it's just hard for us to know that it's updated. So I know for sure I didn't know it was updated, so I haven't read it.
Okay. So I'm just going to give highlights. There were 3 companies that Orland contacted. Only one got back to him with an actual quote, and that's the Crane Company. They would not be able to move them this summer. They would be able to move them next summer, and they've indicated they would honor the quote that they gave. And
Oh, so they ended up giving a quote.
yeah, when I first updated it, they did not have one, and then Orland down at the bottom on. So I updated on the 14th of July, and then if you go down a little ways further, I put another update for July 18th, and that's when we got the quote. And then I put a little drawing in there of where the portables would be moved, kind of a placement 1, 2, 3, 4 along the, kind of like the fire lane next to the gym. Do you guys have that available?
Well, I just wonder, I mean,
Trying
it
to
may
find
email,
out
how
where
do
you even
how do
find
we
it.
get to that shared document?
I can share it right now. I've got it open.
Yeah, great. Would be in our drive.
Probably in the drive somewhere, or you could go to the search for an email with an update, maybe.
Oh, shared with me. Board items revised, there it is. You got a Google Drive shared with me?
Where's Google Drive?
Stuart has an iPad.
Oh, right here, Google Drive.
So a couple of you have it open.
Yeah.
So
One so far,
Oh,
but I'm getting close, I think.
okay.
Okay, I've got it.
Okay, so you see the little rendition of a football field, not to scale. Location 1 and 2 would be the location of, if we relocate, if the board indicates they want to relocate the 2 that are currently on the pavement. That would be next late spring or summer. Location 3 is where the least portable would end up this year, because the modern building supply will come in on the south side of the building, down the fire lane, and bring the portable out in the field. And then location 4, that would leave location 4 open for the second least portable to be brought in next year. And then that gives sufficient space. By 2018-19, the bubble is there, and so that gives portable space at the middle school to house the student population until our new school is open. And they left the 1 and 2 right there just because that way the crane can just pick them up and move them.
So they must have found the stress points and stuff.
I'm not sure. The gentleman did come out and
Yeah.
met with Orland on site, and so
Figured out what to do.
he just did not have the time in his schedule this year to do it.
But that is a significant savings from the other
Yes.
company. A little bit more than half, right?
About 20, yeah, about 23. Mm-hmm. Third.
Yeah. Well, not, yeah, it was like 70-something, right? It's not quite half.
I don't have the numbers right in front of
Good.
me, dealing with numbers. So.
I don't remember the exact number
Yeah,
either.
but
I
it
just
is
know
a
it's
it is
less.
a large savings. You're correct.
Good, that's good. So we're thinking like a year from now, or just June 2018?
I would say
right
we'd
after
want to
school?
get it on their schedule, probably early spring, and so that they could do it as soon as school's out, and then it's done, and teachers can get settled in.
Good.
That's definitely, I think, something that we need to have a discussion item going forward, whether or not it's something, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, if the board's thinking that that's not what we want to do, then we for sure don't want to get it on their schedule. So
Yeah.
do we want to add that to the next board meeting to discuss, or?
Sure.
Okay. If you can make a note of that, Chris.
You very good?
So I think we're ready to move on to the last item.
Okay. So the last item has to do with next steps with facilities and this document. And we'll just stay on this page for right now, but this is just a framework, kind of a skeletal framework of a communication and next steps between now and February. I'm working in collaboration with Lori Oberheide in the communications department with ESD 112 out of Vancouver. And they work with school districts across the state from the point we are with our facilities, with after the board's consensus to move forward, all the way through the bond. So next steps really are, we have a one-page, or we have a online survey that we wanted to share with the board, and this was a result of the discussion from the July 10th board workshop. And there's actually two different ideas here. There's this first 4 questions, this is a very simple survey to get kind of at the heart of where individuals prefer, where our community prefers either one bond with 2 sales or 2 elections, and then also the concept of where the sports complex would fit. And then the next option is a more lengthy survey. So basically, this was put together to, and we're sharing with the board to have you have some discussion and determine if there's any changes or if there's a preference on the type of survey. So before we move to discussion, I'm just going to kind of talk about the idea is to get the survey out in the next day or 2. It will be posted on on Facebook. Our Facebook blast will go out. We'll do a school messenger call. The survey itself will just be a link on our website, and I believe we'll put something in the newspaper just to give people an opportunity for a week. So from the 25th through the 3rd, and then we'll have the data, and that we'll have it back in sufficient time to bring to the table on the 8th, which is when we're scheduled to have what's called a bond branding query, which is a committee meeting made up of about 15 people. We're going to have approximately 9 that would be community members and 6 that are school district employees. So it's a good representation of both, because that committee is going to have kind of a dual responsibility. School district personnel will be responsible for educating the community, and then the community members are, in theory, the bond campaign group. So the group works in tandem, but there's definitive roles of who can say what out to the community during the next several months as we work towards a bond. So and then the other piece, August through February, the other pages on this communication plan will be filled in with working with Lori Oberheide, not only on the 8th, but even beyond, just probably within a week after the 8th, between Lori's work with Chris and I, and probably Tilia and any other school staff that are on that committee. And then we'll just keep the document before the board.
Why the 2-year gap instead of 1 that we were talking about before in running the bonds? I thought we were talking about 18, 19 in the workshop.
So when I'm looking at the project timeline, so in theory, the bonds could be run 2018 or 2019. They just can't, the dollars just can't be sold to bond buyers until we have the debt capacity. So I'm looking at, based on when we would actually design and start building the high school, I believe that's why it's February 20th versus February
I just wanted to make
2019.
sure
But
that doing it that way wouldn't delay the project in any way.
no, I don't believe so. But I think we have, right now, there's still quite a few moving parts to where landing on, if we're going to do a 2018 bond for the K-5, 6, 8, and then a 2019 bond for the high school, or maybe it becomes a 2020 bond, all the fog, if you will clear over the next 4 to 6 weeks for us to be able to move forward with the educational and communication pieces with the community.
I guess, as a board member, my only thing that I would recommend we change in the question is something on here that says the pace of the project doesn't change doing 2 bonds versus 1, because some people might say, well, we want to do one bond under the perception that it's all going to get done faster that way, because there's really nothing in here that says that doing 2 bonds is going to be exactly the same timeline as 1. You know what I'm saying, as a board?
Yeah, and we can change the verbiage on the surveys to include anything that you bring to the table.
It's hard to communicate to the community how long it takes to get this stuff done. Which, you know, it is. It just takes a long time. It's just hard to, from a community member's perspective, if we vote on it now, how come it's not done next week? And that's how I used to be as a community member, so I can relate to it.
Yeah, so can I interject something?
Yeah.
Okay, so because we still don't have a capital project budget passed by the state, we're still looking at, if we have a $55 million package of 2 projects from 2018, opening the second school, being done in 2023 versus 2024. So maybe we want to include something on there that includes those 2 scenarios.
Does the board have any other thoughts or comments?
I don't know which one I prefer, the short one or the longer one, but my concern about the shorter one is that at least the 4th option, I don't know if some people will choose that just because they don't necessarily support the bond, right? Like the options are supposed to be about how we put the bond out to bid, not necessarily asking people if they support the project itself. So I think it could be a little bit confusing in that, which if we maybe just worded it so it says that February 2018 bond, which includes K through 8 facility concerns as well as 9 through 12 facility concerns. Maybe we just worded it that way. People will have a chance to vote for or against the bond when it's put on the ballot, but this is just trying to get us feedback on whether or not we should run 1 bond, 2 bonds, or more bonds. And so maybe the specificity of what's in there should be more generalized. That was just something I was thinking about. It almost looks like we're asking for an early vote to see where we're at with it. That was just my first feeling when I read it. I don't know what the rest of the board thought. And then the second part, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, could you tell me the difference between 3 and 5?
So 3 actually includes both schools, so everything except the athletic complex, where 5 is indicating it would, there would be a bond in 2020 just solely for the athletic complex. That's how I read that.
So 3 means don't ever build the athletic complex, is what you're saying?
Yes. I think what we were trying to do is capture the discussion that I took notes from the July 10th meeting. So that's why we're bringing it back, because I'm not sure if I captured correctly what the board wanted to put out to the community and get feedback.
I just wonder if it would read a little more cleanly if it was, if they were just talked about addressing K through 8 overcrowding and addressing 9 through 12 overcrowding and coming from that angle, and the athletic complex, just to get the idea of if people want to, because I think that was what Tony was getting at, is separating out our biggest need, which is K through 8 overcrowding that's coming. I think our feeling is that's coming first. Then the next need would be the 9 through 12 overcrowding, without getting the specifics about what the bond will be. Because really we haven't completely worded what that resolution is going to look like, and so I just wondered if more of a generalization might be a little easier for people to answer. I'd like to hear, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
So you're talking the generalization in the longer?
Either one that's
Either
chosen, be general in both. Either one, yeah.
Well, I agree, we need to be as general, because we don't have the specifics yet. But,
I would prefer the short one with more broader explanations, more broader instruction, I guess.
I just wonder if you were to say, you know, something like, I'm looking at the first one. I prefer to have all the recommended projects included in the February 2018 bond, and then in parentheses, facilities that address K through 8 overcrowding as well as 9 through 12 overcrowding, which would also include an auditorium and athletic complex. And then even another sentence says, I understand that this would be approving a higher dollar amount by doing it this way. And the next one say this would be approving the same dollar amounts but separated into two separate bonds, so that people know why we're asking that question. Like, what they might read this. I mean, we know what's going on here, but they might read that and say, why does it matter? But if we explain that our idea is to try to separate out the dollars into two different choices for people, or three different choices, maybe just a little more specificity on that part, and then more generalization on what the scope would be. Just the overcrowding at different grade levels. That was a thought I had as I was reading it earlier.
Does the rest of the board think about that?
I would be okay with that.
Okay.
But I think I do prefer the cleaner, simpler one at first.
The shorter one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments for Gina?
So would this just be two questions? Two options? One?
3, right?
So I have one, I prefer all recommended projects included in the February 2018 bond, and then in parentheses, facilities addressing K-8 overcrowding, facilities addressing 9-12, athletic complex and auditorium, and then one bond at a higher amount, and it would be 2 bond sales. I don't know if that will confuse people. It's one bond, but
I think really it's the opportunity for the public to approve these in two separate votes, is what it comes down to, on two separate ballots. And that's maybe the thing that a typical voter would understand is, okay, I can vote for one time, and I can vote for the other in a different one, rather than vote for all of them at once. I think that's maybe the message that would be smart to convey.
right. So I'm just wanting to clarify, because I have 2 boxes right now, 2 options. Is there a third one that I'm supposed to have on here?
For me, I like the one of some kind of wording that says I would prefer to, I don't know the way you wrote it here, but worded a little differently. Rob's a better word person than me, but I like the thought of having the option in there. I think that the way you'd ask it is you'd include the athletic complex and the auditorium together, but as if they want to do a third bond, different, right?
Keep the auditorium with the athletic complex, you were thinking?
Mm-hmm. I don't know that you could say that one's more important than the other.
One thing you could say is maybe regardless of the choices above, I prefer that athletic complex and auditorium be included in a separate bond. Then we're going to get a feel for people who really think that should not be included in our bonds at all.
But I thought the auditorium was part of the K568 scenario.
Part of the
No, there's a mini auditorium, but the
912.
big auditorium would be as part of the high school remodel,
Yeah.
the 1,500 person auditorium.
does the I do not support any of these options need to be there?
I don't think that one should be there, but myself.
They'll probably they just won't complete their survey if they.
Right. They just won't do it.
Is that
So they're saying I'm not going to vote for the bond if they were to
I
mark
guess,
that, right?
The only positive of it, I suppose, is if 90% say they don't support the options, then I guess we just need to go back to start over again with a new committee, I
Yeah.
guess, but.
True.
Is that option
But it's
typical,
kind of,
Gina, do you know?
I feel like that's kind of asking for a vote these ones are saying which option should we do the bond, and then there's one that just says, I don't want anything. To me, that's different than asking what direction we should move.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Mike. Actually, what I did was I gave the, I think you asked if it was standard. I gave the verbiage, provided the verbiage of what we were looking for the survey to Lori. So this might be something that's normally in there, but we brought this to the board as a draft for exactly what we're doing here, discussion. So that can come off.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think if someone wants us to know, they're going to put it in the comment.
Mhm.
So I think I'd take out the fourth option.
Okay, so can I read back this third one to make sure I got it right? So regardless of the choices above or options above, I prefer the athletic complex and auditorium presented in a separate bond. Something to that effect.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I think that's the gist of it. The only thing there is it does give the people the opportunity to check two. And it's asking for one, so.
So it could be you could make it into a 2-question thing, right? The first
Yeah.
one's just one or the other,
Yeah.
and then the second question is just yes or no. Put that statement in yes or no, right? If it's that much different from the others.
Well, it is kind of a third question, though, because those say including the auditorium and athletic complex.
Mhm.
Or you go to two more options, saying that the same as number one, but then athletic complex and auditorium would be in a separate bond as well. So you have 4. But it probably could be worded so that there's like a second question. If you agree with either one's above, but you feel the athletic complex and auditorium should be in a separate bond, check the box below. You still don't get to choose which one above. I think it does have to be separated out. Maybe there's 4 options then. You think?
Very possible.
There's 4 options
I
here.
just don't
You're
want this to be
rewording one of
confusing to
them.
people. I want it to be as simple as
Simple.
possible, but hopefully they'll really understand what we're asking. Would this then be athletic complex and auditorium as well?
Yeah.
In the bold opening paragraph, Gina, the board also wants to gauge public interest in the athletic complex and
Auditorium.
maybe we would put 1,500 seat auditorium so that people know it's a big
Right.
auditorium that we're thinking of, not just another one like MMS.
Yeah.
Maybe going to 4 would make it a little more clear though.
There could be a heading that makes it clear. These 2 options include the athletic complex and auditorium. Then the next one, these 2 options have the athletic complex and auditorium separated. And hopefully people know that that is their opportunity to be against it if they don't want that. The vote is their opportunity to say, no, we don't want it.
Right.
So can I ask for
Yes.
clarification? Okay, so
I'm
Que-
not sure that I understand.
So question 1 in bold, it's going to say the following 2 options include the auditorium and athletic complex. And then it's going to be exactly what I stated earlier. First box will say facility addressing K-8 overcrowding, facilities addressing 912, 1 bond. Because I now can remove the line item athletic and auditorium because we know it's in there. And then the same thing, except it's going to be in 2 bonds. So that's like question 1. And then question 2 would be another bold statement, the following two options exclude auditorium and athletic complex.
Or maybe the following two options would assume a separate bond for the auditorium and athletic complex.
Okay.
So really have a scenario of one bond, two different scenarios that have two bonds, and then another scenario with three bonds.
So I'd say the following two options assumes a separate bond rather than call it a third bond. It's in theory saying the same thing, but that way, I think a third bond that verbiage
Right.
might cause confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sounds good to me.
So Jeannie, you were gonna try to get this in the newspaper so that they can,
So I will send to Lori Oberheide this evening the revised survey. She will work with her staff tomorrow to get it done. What we're going to do is put in the paper the dates of when the survey will be available. I'd safely say the 26th. It should be up tomorrow, but the 26th through the 3rd of August. July 26th, and then Thursday. Yes. And then we'll also put it on our website. We'll do a Facebook blast. We'll do a school messenger.
Good. Okay, any other questions for Gina on the communication plan? Okay. Thank you
So-
for your report.
You're very welcome.
We'll move on to item C3, director discussions. The first one is the legislative report. You just covered it a little bit. Do you have anything else to add, Director Simmons?
Yeah, bring it up right now. Bear with me for a second here. So WASDA hasn't had anything actually since the 14th. But the issue right now is there has been no action on the full budget. And it's because there's this pending solution to this Hearst water rights court case, not to be confused with Dr. Chris Hearst. There's a different Hearst who's to blame for this. But they're not willing to move on the budget until that's solved. So they finished their third special session, and they're talking about coming back for one day to approve it, right, hopefully? But they don't know when that's going to be yet, so it's still, but we know the dollar amounts, but there's still some things that are in limbo, right, that we don't know for sure when it comes to our budget as well, right? We have a good idea what the general dollar amounts are going to be per pupil.
So the general budget is done. It's just the capital project budget that is still in limbo.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So you
Thank
are
you.
correct. And that may or may not get passed this year. That's why we brought to the table, this is their state match. If they don't make any decisions, so that our school district is not waiting to move forward. So if it's passed next July, we would still qualify for that state match, or even if it's passed a couple years later, we'd still qualify for it. It would just, we would receive the funding at a later date.
Gotcha. That was a detail that I had missed on that. But, so there's districts right now that are getting ready to start construction projects. You still don't know where they stand with that, is what I understand.
Yes, they probably know their state match based on what it was last year, but not an increase in area cost allowance.
So another thing that has been passed has to do with collective bargaining, and I would say it would be a difficult place to be if bargaining was going on right now in our district, because now there's just going to be a dollar amount, is what I understand, allotted per teacher, and then it's up to collective bargaining to determine what teachers get what. So there could be a decision for more money to go to sped teachers, for instance. It's not going to be based on, I think, on how many years you have in teaching. That's up to each individual district to bargain. So that'll be something I'm sure will come up in our next bargaining session. You know, there wasn't any major ones that I'd seen other than that, but so that's all I got.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the next item is, we had talked at the last board meeting about having a school board school to invite the community and the candidates for school board to talk about policy governance and how it works, and just wondering if the board's thought about any dates that we could do that, if that's something that we want to do as a board. And I guess, first of all, is it something that we want to do as a board? And if it is, then I think we should get a date on the calendar of when we want to do it.
I think we've agreed that it's something that we want to do. Matter of
Sooner the better, I think, because we're
choosing a date, yeah.
time's
And we'll know,
running.
I believe the primary ballots are due August 1st, I believe. So by the next time the board meets, we'll know the race that's 3 contestants, it'll be narrowed down to 2 at some time.
My August calendar is starting
Ken,
to fill up fast.
the die's
so
already
it's gonna
cast
get
for Ken, so. Are you thinking, are you guys thinking August yet, or September? And are we thinking a weeknight or a Saturday?
It's gotta be a weeknight, 'cause my weekends are booked for August, unless we go into September.
Just trying to remember, how many hours do you think it'll take us? 3 or 4?
I wouldn't go longer than 3, and then I think we'd get feedback if there's a lot of questions, and we can decide if we want to do another one.
You probably get it into 3. I can't recall how long it was when we did the quasi-school with Dr. Hurst. I remember it, I think it was on a Saturday, and so I think it might have been longer than, but maybe we had it done in 3 hours. But I know in that one, we went through every EL and every ends and talked about them individually. That takes a lot of time,
Right.
if that's what we're gonna do. If we're just gonna talk about,
We're talking about conceptual
here's
thing,
what
I
it
think,
is,
right?
conceptual, go back and study the policies, and it would be quite a bit shorter, because we were asking for Chris's interpretation, and,
Yeah.
so,
My only objection would be the week of the 14th through the 18th. I'm not available in August.
okay. Does anybody have any dates? Which day of the week is bad for the local chiropractors?
Sunday.
Tuesdays are good.
I have Tuesday wide open, the 8th. Does that work for anyone else?
I'll be out of town.
Of course you will be. The whole week?
No, I get back the 9th.
10th works for me as well.
I can work the 10th.
10th is
Sure.
fine for me. If we're thinking 6 o'clock?
We're going to do a 3-hour. Do you want to start at that late?
What's the earliest you can come, Stuart?
5:30 would probably be about the earliest I could start.
Let's do that.
Okay. Can the school board contestants both make it? This is more than just the board, because if you guys can't come, there's really no reason for us to talk to ourselves. Yes. Okay. Then, Dr. Hurst, maybe you can get a hold of the other candidates and let them know that's what we're thinking. Since you guys are here, we'll ask you, so then we'll set it, hopefully the other ones can make it. Okay, so 5:30 to 8:30 tentatively?
Sound good. I would say more than tentative.
The tentative end.
Oh, the tentative hand, okay, yeah. Just say more than tentative, because we're not gonna meet again before that, are we? Our
Oh,
next
for
meeting
sure
is gonna be
meeting. I
on
was saying the
14th.
tentative would be the end.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll plan on 5:30 starting.
You're saying no promises on the end, is that what you're saying?
Maybe we'll have to, maybe we'll be done faster than that.
Lock the doors and,
See who quits by the time we get to the end of the meeting. Okay. The third item is the board thoughts we had discussed using some kind of a survey for the board's self-evaluation instead of an individual board member. Just wondering if you guys have had a chance to think about that, to decide what, to me, it's just a direction of, is that something we want to do, or is that something we want to leave how it is? I don't know that it's crucial one way or the other.
I like it. I think the only thing that would be important, though, so that we're discussing in an open public meeting, is that it becomes a separate line item instead of being in general consent. The next meeting, it would be a separate line item for the president to say, here's how we rated ourselves last meeting. Maybe?
Yeah, and I guess my thought would be, if we're gonna do it this way, that the result would be instantaneous, and we just discuss it right then, and it wouldn't need to be a consent agenda
That's right, we
item.
talked about doing a poll, like poll everywhere or something like that, right?
Yeah,
That's right. Okay.
and there's not that many questions. I'm sure you can do a poll everywhere, or even a Survey Monkey, you can, if everybody takes it at the same time, the results are there.
Yeah, I'm for that. I just didn't want it to be then not discussed
'Cause,
specifically.
From my view, the reason to even do this is to prompt discussion at that meeting, because if you wait another 2 weeks
You forget what
to
you
then talk about what we voted,
I agree.
not very valid at that point.
You'll put the Survey Monkey together, Mr. Vice President?
Sure. Or
We shouldn't have to do that. I mean,
Director
we have all
Simmons,
the
you can-
questions.
We have the question, it's just a matter of typing it
Yeah,
in.
about right.
If that other, I don't know anything about that other poll.
I saw it at a
Everywhere.
WASDA conference.
But
Was just
I know there's other formats that they use in the class, because we've seen different classroom ones in our visits. I just don't know what they're called.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever's quick and easy. If this Survey Monkey is the easiest way to do it, then let's do that. If there's some easier way that you guys know of, let's do it that way, from my view. Okay, is there any other director discussion items that we need to discuss this evening?
Just wondering when our new student rep, is she, like, is it the beginning of the school year when she'll be joining us? or-
Would be the first meeting after school starts. I
We
believe.
need to invite her to the school board school.
Yeah. Probably,
That would be important.
probably a good idea to invite both of them to come, Caden to come as well. Is any other items? Okay, there's no items in assurance of his organizational performance tonight, so we'll move on to item E1, EL 18. Is there any recommended changes to that policy? Okay, moving on to GP1. Any recommended changes? There wasn't any submitted previous ahead of time. GP2, item E3. E4, GP3. E5, GP4. Good. E6, GP 6.1. We discussed this as the last meeting as well. If the board, we had talked about having a board committee to go out and find opportunities for linkage for us as a board for this year. If we still want to do that, we need to add GP 6.1. GP 6 is where we have committees. GP 6.1 is where we designate a committee, the purpose, and the time, period. And so I think at the last meeting, we pretty well decided we wanted to have a committee. And I assume we'd call it the linkage committee, but we know the purpose, we just don't really know the time frame that we'd want the report to come to the board, because it needs to have an end date on it. And then Dr. Hirsch can fill in all the blanks once we know that.
I would think that this would be a committee that could probably meet for one meeting and not that long of a meeting to come with their recommendations of who they think the board should link with. And so maybe we could get it done to where we could get our linkage this school year.
Do we want them to
Based on that.
just, and that's a question I had, is do we want them to just come up with opportunities to link, or do we want them to actually go talk to those groups for us and see if they're interested in meeting with the board? How in depth do we want? If it's just here's a list of 20 people you can meet with, that'd be one meeting. If it's here's our list, and then the chairman says, okay, you three go talk to these guys, you three go talk to those guys, and see if they want to meet with the board and what time of year and those kind of things, then it would be maybe a couple meetings.
You know?
It depends on how much we want to delegate to the committee, really. If the board just wants a
Well-
list, and then we're going to go try to schedule it, or if we
we're gonna
want
do
the
that,
committee
then
to do it.
Why even do the thing if we're just gonna say, give us a list of people or organizations?
That's kind of my personal view is that we should have the committee actually go out and do some outreach for us and come back with more of a, here's these groups that would love to meet with you, and we've got some, for sure that they actually do want to meet with us, kind of a thing. Whatever it is, whoever it is, and I still don't see it being more than a month or month and a half
Right.
project, but
2 or 3 meetings at the most, 3 at the most.
How many members were you thinking on this committee?
I don't know that I had a number in mind. Just off the cuff, I'd say somewhere less, 10 or less, but
How will we determine who is on the committee?
we'd have to put out either we would, just two ways to do it, right? Either put it out there and let people come, or specifically invite people. Based on, if we were gonna specifically invite people, I would, for my preference would be to go through people that have been involved and just invite them. Whether it's the group that did the M&E, some of those guys, M&O, or some of the,
Sport complex committee.
some of those from the sports complex committee. That was a while ago, but I'm sure there's people that would be interested in being on it. I guess from my view, there's a lot of ways we could do it. We could, as a board, I think we could say, we want this person to be the chair, and just tell that chair to go, we want you to get 10 people to be on your committee, and we don't have to, we can be as broad or specific as we want to be. It's
I think
our
we just be
committee.
very clear with what the purpose of the committee, that's the biggest thing.
To me, as well.
So I don't think we're gonna be able to figure this out tonight, but I think that by the next board meeting, we need to have clarity. So how do we do that? I mean, you guys ready to write a policy?
It's, we took the generic one out, but we can find it. But basically what it says is the name of the committee, the purpose of the committee, and the timeline. And the purpose of the committee is the most important of the three, from my view as well. What they're tasked to do. I'd be okay with Director Simmons coming up with the written purpose.
Why am I not surprised with that? Because I was thinking I'd be okay with someone else besides me doing it, but
Well, do you wanna,
You're
do
such
we
a good
wanna just
wordsmith.
select actually you brought up a good point. Do we wanna just select the chairperson of the committee and let that chairperson go out and pursue additional people, or do we wanna by invite?
I think you need to have, it's gotta be someone who's interested in doing it. You
Right.
can't just,
Right, but then
Put it on
The
there.
chair
let them
does.
have the freedom after that, or do we pick the committee?
Doesn't matter to me, as long as the chairperson understands the purpose of the committee and really owns that part of it. I don't have a problem with that.
So maybe, to start, maybe by the next board meeting, let's come up with some ideas, either for a chairman or people that you'd like to see on the committee, and then somebody can write the purpose, if Director Simmons
Well,
or
if
somebody
we-
else wants to do it,
if we-
doesn't matter.
If we select a chairperson and get some feedback from that person, maybe that would kind of dictate how we write the policy. Maybe, you know, if he says, yeah, no, I'll take this and run with this, or, no, I want you guys to help me select the committee.
It's true.
I will work on the purpose, committee purpose. Is that what you want me to do by next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that's, we don't have to wait clear to the next meeting too. If the board wants to submit to, send to Juan a list of people that you think might be good chairman, then we can't make a decision, but he could have the list ahead of time. You just want to, yeah, and then, like, whatever we get written by the next board meeting will be better than nothing, so, even if we change the scope a little bit. Okay, so we don't have a new policy written tonight, so I assume we'll table that to the next board meeting. And move on to item 7, GP8. And if you pull that up, I don't know if the board's members have had a chance to review I did write a new GP8 policy. And we've got them in here side by side, but there's not much in the new policy that's in the old policy, so I don't know if it does any good to have them side by side, but they're quite a lot of pretty extensive changes to them, and a lot more structure to the policy that I wrote. So I don't know if the board has any comments, if you had a chance to look at it and review it, or if you want to take time to review it and then look at it again next board meeting, if you haven't had a chance.
It took me 3 days to read it, and then, but I haven't really had it sink in yet.
I'd like some more time.
Now, the only concern I had as I was reading this was when we evaluate ourselves, when we write a new policy on starting broad, this is very specific.
Mhm.
And I wonder if,
I figured that there'd be some items that we would discuss and say we don't want that or we don't need it. I just threw a whole bunch of stuff in there, and some of it is actually probably in currently is probably in district operating policies. I guess part of that, my feeling is that it shouldn't be in district operating policies when it relates to the board, and so part of my reason to writing this is to figure out which ones those policies are and take them out and replace them with this. Because I don't see some of these things, like the type of meetings that the board has, I don't see that as a district operating policy. In the old style it was, but you know what I'm saying? And that's part of the reason why some of it's long, because some of it I think you have to have in there by WAC code in a policy
well,
somewhere.
yeah, and some of these are I think when they are dictated by WAC and RCW, though, I don't have it. I have a problem with it being in operating policies because they're not really in that case, they're not our policies, right? We're just regurgitating what the RCW or WAC law already was. Like the first part that lays out our meeting structure, that makes sense to me.
Mhm.
The consent agenda approvals do, because that's not dictated by law. But when you start getting into meetings and the notice that has to be given and all that, now you're into law on that one. And I don't personally have a problem with that being in operating policies. because if the law changes, those need to be changed as well.
Mhm. It's kind of it's both in there, though. Some of it's there's parts of them that are law, but not everything in there is.
Yeah.
I mean, like where regular meetings are, where the meeting's held, when it's held, that's not a law, that's a board. That's what the board decided.
Yeah.
The law says you have to meet once a month, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's a big enough policy where I'd like the board to come back with some more thoughts on it.
Just a
this time.
question, why the change? Why such an extensive one?
It started with, for me, I didn't like how this original policy was written. It was just from my view, it was just a generic one that was given to us at the time.
Mhm.
And a lot of it didn't make sense to me. That's where it started, and then it just kind of grew from there. So I'm okay with paring it back. Just, but that where it started was for me was basically in where the section A through F was, and none of that made any sense to me the way it was written now, the way it's written now. And then I felt like that there'd been enough questions on what is a consent agenda item and what is not, that I wrote basically what I think a consent agenda item is, and the board may or may not agree with the way I wrote it. Specifically, governance things inside of consent agenda items, I personally don't think they should be there. So I wrote the policy that way. But doesn't mean that it should or shouldn't be in there, it's just my perspective of it.
Yeah, I'd like to bring that back to the next meeting. A
Well,
lot of work
and
though,
'cause-
good job.
And the other thing is to give our president a chance to also comment.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny, in the regular meeting, you say that it starts at 7 o'clock at the boardroom unless another location is determined by the president and, or a majority of the vote. So you say it's okay to move the location, but you don't say it's okay to move the time.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff would be things we would discuss. Like I was saying, I mean, it may be something where the board says, hey, we don't even need that in there, or it may be where the board as a whole says, we just put in there the time, we don't need to even deal with the location. There could be a lot of stuff changed in here, taken out, changed. But,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay, so Director Simmons wants to table to the next meeting.
I agree.
Mike Stewart does well. Okay, so we'll table that. And then if you let President Garza know as well that it's there, so that he can have a chance to review it. Okay, item E8. This is a second look at the calendar that was presented a few board meetings ago. It needs to be approved before the other one ends, not necessarily tonight, but again, it's if the board wants to make changes or revisions, we could approve it tonight, we could wait. It just needs to be approved before the other one ends, which is the end of September, I believe.
I like this, and I think
First of
that's gonna be
September,
changed anyways, because we don't have any linkage in here. They'll need to add some things as we go along, right? But other than that, I like it. Contract extension spelled wrong, but other than that, I didn't find any more. Oh, wait, ceremonies is spelled wrong.
I'm sure there's misspellings in there. We always have to send it to an English major, which is not me. I think there is some linkage in here. I was just looking for it. There's, I think, the same linkage opportunities as was in the year before. But as that committee comes back, we just would do an amended calendar at that point. So there's PTA linkage and dignitary, same as we did before last year. built into it.
I suppose you can't use a bigger font, right? It is small. I know, I'm getting there.
Yes, you are.
I'm not as bad as Stuart yet, but I'm getting there.
You're close.
I'm sure, do you have just the PDF version, or do you have the actual Excel template that this was built on? Okay, so you could play with the size of the words and stuff. I can do it, but if you guys want to do it, sounds better. And correct the spelling.
Which ones did you catch already? Ceremonies?
Yeah.
Scholarship?
It won't take them
ceremonies.
very long.
Scholarship?
I didn't, yep, scholarship and extension for superintendent, contract extension.
Kids don't even have to pass spelling anymore. Trying to set the example.
Yeah, extension.
Okay, so we'll table that one to the next board meeting as well. And they'll try to make the font bigger and make sure
I
there's
don't-
no spelling.
I don't
Or
mind
do you wanna-
approving it with those changes.
Yeah. I'm fine with
I'm for that.
Okay, so then we'll need a motion.
I move to approve the revised GP 8.1 annual board calendar with the changes to try and increase font size and some spelling corrections.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Simmons to approve GP 8.1 annual board calendar for 2017-18 school year with the potential of larger font and spelling corrections. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Director Mike Garza. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay, moving on to item F1. There is a need for executive session this evening. After a 5-minute board recess, we'll go into executive session for 45 minutes for the purpose of discussing staff evaluation, and there will be no action taken. We'll recess now at 8:18 for 5 minutes. Thank you for coming.